Welcome to round two of our live stream efforts this afternoon on NEA Report. Stan Morris reporting as we're getting set to do special coverage of a case that we began covering yesterday on NEA Report, and we're going to follow up with today. Stand by as we give everyone a chance to join us, and hopefully Facebook will, well, it won't be so. This is NEA Report and a special report tonight on the 2015 police shooting of Christopher Grant Finley by the Jonesboro Police Department and Officer Heath Loggins. The video has been released of the incident to NEA Report following several Freedom of Information Act requests, along with reports and more information. Tonight we're going to go through the video as has never been done before. We're going to go through some parts of it frame by frame. We're going to repeat other parts of it and compare parts of it to the reports that were actually filed. We're going to be asking several questions tonight as well. The first of which, did Loggins have a legal right to try to enter the home? The second of which is, was the door open or closed during the shooting? And the third, what was the justification for lethal force by police? We hope we can provide answers to at least some of these questions tonight, as we will effort to answer them all. Tonight we're looking at the evidence, the facts, no opinions. This is news. This is NEA Report.
Fall back. Somebody get around the back of the house. Reload. Cover me.
Let's begin on the very first frame of the first video that we're going to show you tonight. This is an officer, Brian Davis, who was stationed nearby as a tense standoff was beginning and already unfolding at the 900 block, 900 exactly, Walnut Street. This was 2015. This was back in April of 2015, so just a heads up on that. And as you take a look, as we begin to play the video, the officer gets the call that the situation has begun. We're going to show you what happens right now in its entirety as the officer rolls up. Let's take a look.
Fall back. Somebody get around the back of the house. Reload. Cover me.
Now, I paused the video there because we just saw several things, all of which are adrenaline-creating moments for many of you in chat, and I'm certain that many of you are watching this are going to get emotional just as I was the first time I watched through some of this. The video shows several things. As the officer Davis rolls up, we can see on the right side of your screen, that's Heath Loggins, okay? Loggins was, according to the police report and according to the lawsuit, so it's relatively undisputed, he was attempting to force his way into the home of Christopher Grant Finley. He was chasing after Finley, who had come out of the home a short time before, and then apparently ran back inside. Whenever Finley ran back inside, he tried to close the door, but Loggins was right behind him and apparently tried to force his way in. Again, we're really at undisputed points in the story right now. I want to point that out. When the door was at least attempted to be slam closed by Finley, that's when the officer said that his hand was hit by a bladed object, a machete. That's how it was described by both Loggins, but another officer as well. The officer is seen in the video, the moments that you're about to see right here, right after what I just told you, right after that allegation of the machete hitting the officer's hand. You can see him backing away and he begins firing his duty weapon. Watch. It's worth noting as we take a look at this very intense video, let's go back a few frames. The officer to the left of Officer Loggins does not initially have his weapon drawn and aimed. In fact, as he pulls up, or runs up, I should say, to the officer, you can see what is about to happen. He has his hand on his weapon, and he's actually unbuttoning it to have the weapon ready to pull. Suddenly, he has to push himself back from Loggins as Loggins begins firing 14 shots into what is a closed door. And we're going to show you how we know that after this.
Shot fired. Fall back. Mike around back to hatch. Reload. Cover me.
By the way, I want to point out, in that quote, you heard Loggins say he was reloading. That's because he emptied his clip into the front door. So I told you that we knew the front door was closed, and this is how we knew that. Watch the SWAT team enter. They have to use a battering ram to knock the door open. And even then, they have trouble getting inside of the home. The reason is because something is blocking the other side of the door. It's the body of Grant Finley. As mentioned, the person that lied on the other side of that door, dead, was Christopher Grant Finley, 31. He was severely mentally ill. He suffered from paranoid schizophrenia, according to the various reports. In fact, his father had showed up to the scene a short time before all of this that you just saw unfolded, and reportedly spoke to officers. That's what the lawsuit claims. The lawsuit says that he begged officers not to enter the home, and that he would bring his son, Grant Finley, to the police station the next day, April 15th. But April 14th did not make it to the 15th, with Grant Finley still alive, because a short time later, Loggins said that Finley came out of the home and that he was going to try to make contact with him when he did. You can hear in some of the video that we've not shown you yet, some that we will, when Loggins shouts, "Go, go." And then a short time later, that's when he was allegedly hit by the machete in the hand, suffering what the report detailed as a, quote, minor injury, required no medical attention. According to the police report, it said that there was a minor amount of swelling around the wrist. There was no cuts noted. But following that, he unloaded 14 rounds, his entire clip, into the door, through the door. And then 1 hour later, authorities entered the home. That's where they found Grant Finley had not moved since the hour before, when he was shot to death. We've answered one of our 3 questions so far. Was the door open or closed during the shooting? It was closed. The other 2 questions now become even more important. The first of which was, did Loggins have a legal right to try to enter the home? The second question is, what was the justification or reason for lethal force as given by police? The next question we're going to try to answer is, why the use of lethal force? As described by Officer Paul Williams, quote, there was an approximate 12-inch gap in the door as Finley was pushing on the inside of the door in an attempt to keep Loggins from pushing the door open. As I approached Loggins at the door to help clear Finley from the door and make entry, I saw a hand holding a bladed object come through the opening of the door and swing downward, striking Loggins on the left arm just above the wrist. The moment that happened is when the shooting took place next. I want to point out, I did verify with prosecutors that a machete was recovered at the scene and photos taken of that machete and introduced to a grand jury. And yes, I did say grand jury because a grand jury was impaneled in this case, and we'll get to that in a second. But we've answered our second question. What was the justification for lethal force by police? The answer is that Finley hit Loggins with a machete. Now, the final question. It all comes down to one question, and that's the question it came down to for the prosecutor of the 2nd Judicial District, Scott Ellington. Did Loggins have a legal right to try to enter the home? 2nd Judicial District Prosecutor Scott Ellington is standing by for a live interview on NEA Report, but first, we spoke with the Assistant City Attorney for Jonesboro, Jessica Thomason, and we asked her a few questions about this case. Specifically, can an officer chase you into your home? And this one is tough to answer because there is a legal doctrine called hot pursuit, which gives an officer certain rights to enter a home if the officer is already in pursuit of a suspect that he's attempted to arrest, he or she, and that the suspect has fled. That is questionable if that's what took place in this case, obviously, because Finley came out of his home and then because he thought that the officers had gone, right, after his father had left. And then he realized officers were still there, and he turned around and tried to run back in, but that's when Heath Loggins tried to grab him, got the door closed on him, and then emptied his gun through the door. The only time an officer can use lethal force is if the officer feels like his life or someone else's life is in danger. That is according to the legal source that counsels Jonesboro Police Department officers. It's hard to say whether or not somebody can feel as though their life is in danger if there's a door between them and the suspect. I asked that specifically. There was not a potential for an answer to be given, as the city can't comment on ongoing litigation, but I was able to ask questions about generalized cases, right? She said it was so fact-specific, you would have to look at the specific case to see whether it was justified. And it was difficult for her to specifically give me answers on what might be able to be applied to this case. Other than to say, it depends. But it was a question that challenged Scott Ellington. And Ellington impaneled a grand jury on this case. The grand jury ended up finding that there was not enough to charge the officer. But we've got Scott Ellington standing by. In fact, let's talk to him. Thank you, sir, for taking a couple of moments to talk to us today. Appreciate you.
Sure, Stan. My pleasure, Stan.
Yes, sir. You mentioned that a grand jury had been impaneled in this case. I was unaware of that. Don't know if that may have been reported in the past, but we're obviously playing catch-up on a lot of the details in this. As best you can remember, can you tell us how that went?
Well, yes, we had a grand jury. We impaneled a special grand jury just for this case. We ordinarily do not do the grand juries in the state of Arkansas for state court. Generally, the prosecutor reviews police investigative files and then makes a determination as to whether or not to file charges. In this particular case, it was one of those that was going to be charged public. There's quite a bit of publicity we knew, and it was not. There were parts of self-defense, but then parts of some concern that we thought needed to be someone else needed to help us make a decision about.
Sure.
So we asked Judge to impanel a grand jury. Judge Ralph Wilson, who's the chief judge of the 2nd Judicial District, came over. We sent out jury summons, brought those folks in, and he picked a panel of 18 to hear the evidence and make a decision. So that's where we what happened. This was in, I think, 2015.
That's right.
And it was the Thursday and Friday before Memorial Day. So it was just about 3 years ago when we actually impaneled the grand jury and had them to hear the evidence that would be presented. We called in witnesses, investigative witnesses, witnesses on the scene, and then the subject that was involved, the officer that was involved, had an opportunity to bring himself in, and he came in and spoke to the grand jury as well. In Arkansas, now in federal grand juries, which all federal cases pretty much come to court by a grand jury indictment. And generally in those cases, the grand jury has to find probable cause, which is basically what a detective has to find when they make or a police officer has to make when they make an arrest. And we have probable cause hearings, every day in district court where they bring in their paperwork and the judge reads it to determine if, in fact, they did have adequate probable cause to make the arrest and then to be bound over for a trial. However, in Arkansas, in the state courts, when we call a grand jury, there's some language in there that has to be, basically, of the 18 people, 12 has to say they would vote guilty. So it's not just a vote of a majority vote to indict or a majority vote to say we found probable cause, but 12 had to say that they would actually vote guilty in the case. And in this particular case, there were several facts that are known and have been released to the public in the police reports. The individual that was killed, he did have a machete in his house. The officer did get struck by a machete. I think that's in the police reports as well. And then the officer did have his hands on the subject at some point in and out first confrontation. However, he did not effect an arrest and was not able to effect an arrest. And when the officer then received the blow from the machete, the officer backed away and fired rounds into the door from which the individual was hiding behind.
Now, once the officer, and I'm sorry for interrupting you there, once the officer gets his hands on a subject and can make the arrest, would the hot pursuit doctrine apply for the officer to be able to chase the subject if he runs into his home?
Well, and those theoretically, not discussing this case that we're talking about.
Right.
But hot pursuit generally is if the officer is about to effect an arrest and the subject takes off running, flees from the officer, and goes, if the officer's if the subject's at a store and the officer walks in as the subject is holding up, robbing a convenience store, and then he's about to lay hands on the guy and arrest him, then the guy takes off running and he runs 3 doors down, runs into somebody's apartment. The officer, yes, can follow him in and effect an arrest. He could effect an arrest even if the guy ran 10 blocks in and ran into his own house.
I see.
So yes, there is a hot pursuit doctrine or situation where officers can do that. A little bit closer call in this case, and I think that from the police reports, it's the individual was in his own yard, out in front of his house, and I think that in the police reports you would see that he was actually got his door open and made it into the house before the officer was able to lay hands on him. The officer was pushing the door open and so that was the question, and basically that was the question that I needed the grand jury to make a determination about. The grand jury in returning no true bill, I think one can say they decided that in that particular case they thought hot pursuit was appropriate, or in that particular case they thought that use of the officer's use of his firearm was justified in that the subject had struck the officer with the long-bladed implement or machete. And so I think that's that was the question that needed to be answered. That was such a, I wanted their input. I wanted the community's input in even bringing the charges in this particular case.
Understood. Was the machete recovered? Do you remember if that was presented as evidence? I'm wondering about that.
Well, the machete was recovered, and it was photographs of it was presented to the grand jury.
I see.
In a grand jury, you do not have to present the evidence as you would in a trial. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be introduced and foundations laid and the actual implement introduced into the proceeding when you can use the photographs and testimony of the to do that. So it wasn't actually. I think it might have been brought to the hearing. I can't remember specifically, but it was not. It was not something that. I mean, if a picture was brought, that would be just fine too.
Second Judicial District Prosecuting Attorney Scott Ellington, thank you so much, sir, for taking a few minutes to talk to me.
Okay.
One final bit of research that we at least attempted to do and do justice to today was the hot pursuit doctrine, a doctrine that provides that police may enter premises where they suspect a crime has been committed without a warrant when delay could potentially endanger lives or the lives of others. There are other definitions of it as well. In fact, we spent most of our day figuring out that just about every outlet across America and the globe has a different definition of hot pursuit. What it generally boils down to is whenever an officer begins pursuing someone after a legal police contact, if the person were to run in a home or into their home during the course of that encounter, the officer could chase them, right? That's generally what it means. It generally does not mean that an officer can stand outside or wait outside of a wanted person's home and as soon as they step outside, chase the person back into their home. Although, again, it could potentially be construed as meaning that too. This seems to be the core of the, at least for the most part, the debate that took place with the grand jury, the hot pursuit law. So we come down to these three questions in closing. Was the door open or closed during the shooting? The answer to that one, we know, was closed. What was the justification for lethal force by police? It was that Finley hit Loggins with a machete that was photographed and recovered from the scene. But, again, both of those questions bring us back to the first question. Did Loggins have a legal right to try to chase a suspect into his home after the suspect had walked out of his home just for a second? Under the hot pursuit law? Probably not, because the hot pursuit law was not designed to give authorities justification to chase people into their dwelling, into their homes without a warrant, unless they witnessed or are investigating that person for a crime committed earlier that then results in them being chased or run into their own home. The exception would be if officers felt like something inside of the home was going to take place that could potentially harm someone other than Finley in this particular case, or the subject. And again, that would not meet the criteria in this case. We include the word probably because, as I said, this is one of those questions that might be answered differently depending on the group of people that you get the question in front of. But doing the best that we can and trying to answer the question under the original intention of the law, the hot pursuit doctrine, which is established to allow police to pursue alleged criminals even outside of their jurisdiction or, if needed, into dwellings. That was not the intention of the law in this case, and it would indicate, at least to this reporter, it probably was not a legal event when the officer tried to charge into the home.
What a great day it is in Craighead County. You know, we got a very important election coming up, May 22nd. You'll get to choose your new judge. I hope and pray that you look at the issues at hand. This is a very, very important election. This will be the first 4-year term for your county judge. We're facing many, many issues, from school safety to road safety to drainage. We have plans in place. I'm coming in with a strong team of people with boots on the ground. We're going to make this a better Craighead County. We're going to be open and transparent. This is your office, It's always going to be an open door policy. And you know, I'm happy to announce I've got a team of volunteers. It's going to be called the Craighead County Green Team. We're going to clean up the ditches and roadways in Craighead County. With the resources that we have on hand, you're not going to see illegal dump sites and things like that. We're going to be proactive. We're going to make this a better Craighead County. My name is Jeff Presley, and I approve this message.
Family Medical Clinic of Walnut Ridge and Bono are your neighborhood healthcare providers, and we're now accepting new patients. We know you have a tight schedule, so we're here 6 days a week at both locations from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Walk-ins are welcome. In Walnut Ridge, stop by 1045 West Main Street or call us to make an appointment, 886-8300. In Bono, we're on Highway 63 North or call 930-9990. Walnut Ridge Family Medical Clinic and Bono Family Medical Clinic, here for you when you need us.
It's time now for a look at your New Wave Wireless weather, home of the $49 iPhone screen repair. And what it looks like today, it's been kind of a warmer day than we maybe even thought it was going to be yesterday. Temperatures have gradually inched up in the National Weather Service forecast for us all week. As we moved into the week deeper and deeper, we're now seeing a day or two this weekend with 90-degree plus temperatures. First for us this year, if I'm not mistaken. Tonight, it's going to be mostly clear with a low around 66. Tomorrow, a high near 89, mostly sunny. Just sunny on Friday with a high near 89, but breezy as well. And then Saturday, mostly sunny with a high around 90. Same story for Sunday, maybe even up to 91 degrees by the time Sunday gets here. And Monday, a 20% chance of showers starts our week out. It lasts at least into Wednesday, staying around a 20 to 30% chance the whole week long, but hanging out that possibility for showers and thunderstorms. Gusty winds for us today, to say the least. Fair and breezy in Jonesboro right now with 87 degrees is what the temperature is reading at the moment. It's time for Wanted Wednesday, which is normally with Jeremy Rowland of Triple R Bail Bonds, but our buddy Jeremy needed himself a day off today, and quite frankly, we understand the feeling. So today, it's going to be Wanted Wednesday with your good buddy, Stan the Man. And it's Wanted Wednesday for Derek Pinnell of Baxter County. He has apparently, according to Triple R Bail Bonds, not met his obligations to the justice system, and they're looking for help finding him. Now, we are wanting to make sure we let you know that there is no approaching the suspect. There's no capturing him yourself. Only call Triple R Bail Bonds. But if you do call him, you could walk away with a $500 reward. You will if you help him find him. 870-257-2282. And don't forget to connect with Triple R Bail Bonds on Facebook, on social media, and especially on Twitter. My buddy Jeremy likes to use the Twitter machine, and, well, we like to use it too. So you can follow us as well. Follow Wanted Wednesday with Triple R Bail Bonds and download their app too. It has all of the most wanted suspects, and if you know any of them, well, you could always walk away with some cash thanks to Triple R Bail Bonds. Turning to our top story tonight, hours of police video come through and released to NEA Report. And I know a lot of folks are going to be wanting to see the video in its entirety, but the problem is it doesn't exist that way. It's actually in a proprietary file format only police generally can use until they share it with media, and then we have to rip it. So we have actually had to rip all of these video segments you've seen. Tonight we're going to be working on putting those together to where we can hopefully give everybody the opportunity to watch as much of it uninterrupted as you want. That's on our YouTube page that we will put that video. Subscribe to us on YouTube. We don't send a whole lot of videos out, so you can check us out there. You won't get bugged a whole lot, and you'll be able to see that video along with our newscasts every day that are uploaded in high definition after the fact. It's a very difficult story to cover, very difficult for the family, very difficult for police all involved, and we hope we have been able to cover it accurately here today on NEA Report. We appreciate everybody liking, watching, and tuning in. Thank you so very much. Now you're up to date.